one step forward, 3,000 steps backwards, back to square one, back to all the mainstream media pot-shotting the football in this country because of what they think it is. I think by the time I'm going to make this prediction right now. By the time Erling Haaland's career is done, he will be the best striker in Premier League history. He'll be better than Alan Shearer, and he'll be better than Thierry Henry. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of the Two Footed Tackle podcast. I'm your host, Ari Stamatakos, and it has been a week where football is back in its entirety. No interruptions, no delays, no postponements. And it's here. Club football is back, and if we're talking Premier League sense, it was back in a big way. A couple of big games, a couple of big derbies, which we'll definitely speak about. Hope everyone's well. Hope the weekend has treated you well, and the week, I guess. The reception, I should say, on last week's podcast was very nice. Doing international football, it's something I haven't really done, but in terms of spoken about, I've kind of just ignored it. But no, it was good to chat about it, and especially considering the World Cup is on the horizon, I feel like I ought to speak about it at that stage. Just as always, before I start, I feel like I should do it at the start and end of every episode. Make sure you obviously subscribe on YouTube, Two Footed Tackle Podcast, notification bell, like the video, like the podcast, like all the clips as well, and all the socials. Two Footed Tackle Podcast on TikTok and Instagram, TFTPod on Twitter, and that's they're all the socials, audio platforms, Anchor, Google Podcast, Apple Podcast, and Spotify as well. Spotify is probably the main one, although looking at from an analytics perspective, Apple Podcast is the main one, which surprises me to a little bit of an extent. But I think it's time we move on. Not a lot has happened. I don't think I can speak for 5 minutes for the intro like I normally do, unless something's happened. Unless nothing's really happened. On a personal note, nothing's really happened. Also, actually, that's what I was going to do. I want to plug myself because I did this at the start of a couple of episodes ago. In the description are going to be my personal links, my Twitter, Instagram, etc. Give us a follow. Give us a follow on Twitter, especially. I feel like I'm quite funny on Twitter. I don't know. I do tweet from the podcast account in terms of my football, like my thoughts on games and tactical stuff. But otherwise, I feel like I'm quite funny on Twitter. So give us a follow. That'd be great. Also, check out the Inner Sanctum YouTube channel as well. So if you want to hear, if you like when I speak about Australian football, and that we'll be touching on Australian football at the end of this episode. If you like to hear me talk about Australian football, I do that quite a bit on the Inner Sanctum YouTube channel. So just go to the Inner Sanctum YouTube channel. If you want some player spotlights, that's my series, and there's other videos heading into the A-League season, which I'll speak about. So if you want my thoughts on if you want a preview of the A-League season, like a little short preview of the A-League season from my perspective, check out the Inner Sanctum YouTube channel. In a couple of days, that video will be out, as well as a video on some talking points heading into the A-League. So 2 videos coming out if you want me to speak about the A-League. We'll touch on that a little bit later on as well, considering it does start this Friday. But I think that's all. Yes, plugged myself enough. Let's speak about the football. Now, there's a couple of things that have happened over the weekend. I want to speak about a certain player in particular, and as you can tell by the title of this podcast, you know exactly what player I'm speaking about. He's a fucking joke. Look, I don't really like to swear, but I can't not. We'll touch on him though. Touch on both derbies that happened, the Northern Derby and Manchester Derby, and the big talking point is Wolves have let go of their manager Bruno Large, and I didn't really speak about them a lot in my pre-season predictions. I didn't think this would happen, but I guess we'll just have to. I guess I'll analyze it when the time comes, when I get onto that talking point. And obviously, who went into footed. If you are aware of what's happened in Australian football recently, you know exactly what I'm going to speak about. And of course, we'll do a little bit of an A-League preview in there. We'll do a little bit of an A-League preview in there, as I've just been reminded. So I'll add that to my run sheet so I don't forget. Now, let's start. Give thoughts. give thoughts. Here we go. All right, let's start. Let's crack on, and let's go to the man in the title, what everyone's here for. If you click on this podcast and you haven't seen it before, that's obviously why you clicked on it. Erling Haaland is a fucking joke. I don't really like to swear, but I feel like I can't not when speaking about this word. He obviously was the Manchester derby on the weekend. Just another casual hat trick. just casual hat trick. Nothing really to speak about, if you want to call it that. Nothing really to write home about. Just another hat trick. Just his third hat trick in 8 games, or in 8 Premier League games. Just his 14th goal in 8 Premier League games. He's an absolute joke. Like, he's an absolute joke. It's taken him 8 games, should say, to get a hat trick of hat tricks. To get 3 Premier League hat tricks, it's taken him 8 games. The next fastest player was, I think, I can't remember who it was. It might have been Andy Cole, but I know that it was 48 games. It took 48 games for the next person. It might have been Alan Shearer, actually. Or who knows who it was. But the next person to score 3 Premier League hat-tricks, it took them 48 games. It's taken Haaland 8. He's got 14 goals in 8 games. He's something like 8 goals off the Premier League Golden Boot winner from last year with 30 games to go. I just don't understand how you can be this ruthless and this proficient and this just. What do you even say to it? What do you even say to it? How can you even describe it? Like, his goals on the weekend were just fucked. Like, obviously you had the header from the corner, which probably should have got cleared off the line and probably should have been defended a little bit better. And then you had the tap in for his third, or like the pass cross goal for his third. Can't remember what his first was, actually. That's probably bad for me. I did tune out of the game, in fairness, because it was quite dull, with all due respect. But if we just, so you had that. So you obviously had the header, which is something that we haven't really seen from Haaland this, or in his game, especially coming into the Premier League. We all know that despite his size, despite his athleticism, he isn't exactly the best aerial presence. He doesn't like to get on the end of crosses or whatever. But he scored a great header, and then obviously 2 just well taken goals. Now, the title says, can he be the best? Is he the best striker, or could he be the best striker the Premier League has ever seen? Now, he's still, what is he, 22? Is he 22 years of age? He can't be. He's 22 years old. He's 22 years old. If he stays at City, you'd think he'd be at his prime, or you'd think he'd be at this level till he's at least about, 33, 32? So that's 10 more years he's got playing at this level, you'd think. And then you have, obviously, Pep's system, or Pep has changed his system to fit him so well. So you obviously have that. It's a mitigating factor. Whether or not City maintain this level is obviously a mitigating factor. But another factor is that he's going to be the main man. Like, he's not going to be pushed out to the left or to the right. There's not going to be a player to come and replace him. He's going to be the main man for at least 10 years should he stay at City. So can he be the best footballer? Can he be the best striker the Premier League has ever seen? Could he be the best player the Premier League has ever seen? I mean, he's probably the best footballer in the world right now. I would actually say it's hands down he's the best footballer in the world right now. I think Messi's starts of the season's been pretty good. I think, obviously, Benzema has had a fantastic year. Probably will win the Ballon d'Or. But apart from that, I just can't think of a player that has had such an impact at the start of the season. I think Messi's probably the only one that's playing at like the elite level. Messi's start of the season has been phenomenal, which has been a little bit underrated. But he's a joke. Like, he's an absolute joke. He's a joke. And I just want to say, before I delve deeper into the conversation, I sincerely apologise because I made a statement saying that I think Darwin Núñez would score more goals than Haaland in this season, or in both of their first seasons at Premier League level. Now, the reason I say this is I was thinking too tactically. I was thinking Nunes fitted better to the Liverpool system than Haaland to the Man City system. That was my thought process. And I don't think that's an unfair thought process to have, and I don't think I should be ridiculed so much for that thought process. However, what I didn't take into account was Pep having the ability to change his game style to fit Haaland, because their game style has become a lot more direct. It's become a lot more suited to having a natural number 9 up front. And he's just a joke. Like, he's an absolute joke. He's a joke of a footballer. Joke of a footballer playing in a joke of a system, playing in a joke of a team. Like, everything... we are seeing the peak sporting performance in this first month and a half of the season. Peak sporting performance. Because, like, everything about this start of the season for Haaland has been exceptional. It's a joke, to be honest. And let's delve deeper into 2 talking points. Or one talking point that branches off. Could he be the best striker the Premier League has ever seen? And then by virtue, could he be the best footballer the Premier League has ever seen? Now, when you look at the categories for both of those people, when you look at the people in both of those categories, you'd say the best striker the Premier League has ever seen. It'd be hard to go past Alan Shearer purely because of his record. Harry Kane has also been a fantastic striker along the years. Thierry Henry, we all know. And then you have other players like Cole and York and these players who were so good for so long. And then you have the players who didn't have the best goal-scoring record but were still fantastic servants. You look at the likes of Didier Drogba and other players of that ilk, right? Haaland has been in the Premier League for 8 games and he scored 14 goals. Now, I don't know. I'm not good at maths. I didn't do maths in Year 12, so I can't figure out what that will equate to if he continues this form. But he'll finish the season with at least 40 goals in all competitions. And if he finishes the season with 40 Premier League goals, I don't think I'll be surprised. That'll be the most in Premier League history. I think Alan Shearer might have got 42 when he was the Football League. I'm not quite sure. I'll just double check that. But yeah, I think he could quite easily score at least 40 goals this season. So yeah, the most goals scored in a single Premier League season is 34, tied for both Andy Cole and Alan Shearer, 34 goals each. I think he'll beat that. Now, straight away, that propels him to a different level in terms of when you categorise him in terms of best Premier League strikers. What he has... I don't think if you're talking pure footballer, I think it's going to be hard to make that argument purely because you have the likes of Henry and these type of players who are more technical. Of course, Ronaldo won a Ballon d'Or, right, when he was at United. Obviously, when you speak about Henry, you have to speak about Dennis Bergkamp by virtue of association. And then you have the likes of like other players, right, who are escaping my mind, and I don't want to say players and forget others just so people can give me shit about it. But if he surpasses Alan Shearer's record, which let's just assume he doesn't make another move, because let's just assume Man City would probably demand at least 150 to 200 million for him. At least. Considering they got him for £50 million, Haaland right now is probably worth at least £200 million. And that's right now. Imagine in 4 years' time when he's 26, right? I don't think he'll leave. I think he'll end his career at City. Well, at least end his prime at Man City, unless he runs out of contract and gets unhappy or etc. Now, what that means is he has probably a better chance than anyone to dethrone Shearer's record. Do I think he'll do it? I don't know. I think he's probably... Funny thing is, I think he's more likely than Harry Kane. And Harry Kane's second, I think, and he's not that far behind Shearer. For me, I think you have to look... If you're looking at best Premier League strikers, you have to look at goal scoring records, so that's why I say Shearer is the best. Even though you probably have Henry, who he was a striker but also played on the left. But I mean, in that system, in that 4-4-1-1 system, he played alongside Bergkamp up front, right? So he's a striker. What but like, fuck, it's so tricky. It's a very tricky talking point. It's a very interesting thing to speak about. Now, why I bring this up is because he's probably the best striker I've ever seen in terms of the Premier League. I think you can say the likes of Luis Suarez. I think the only thing Erling Haaland can add to his game, the only thing, is to start scoring goals from nowhere, like Suarez used to do. Like Suarez used to do in terms of, I think we all remember that goal against Norwich where he just takes the ball off the half volley from 50 yards out and just bangs it, right? If Haaland can start to do that, he will add 10 goals a season and he'll probably be the best player the Premier League has ever seen. I think this 8-week patch is the best 8-week patch I've seen from a footballer in a long time, especially in the Premier League. Granted, I am only 18, remember. And if he can just continue this for the season, and obviously injuries play a part of this, if he stays injury-free and continues this run of form, he'll score at least 34 goals a season. So he'll beat Cole and Shearer, in my opinion. He scored 14 in 8 games. By the time there's 16 games, he would have scored 28 goals in 16 games if this continues. That means he has 22 games left to score 6 goals, which he'll do, right? I think he breaks Cole and Shearer's record. I think if he stays in the Premier League and he stays relatively injury-free, I know he won't say completely injury-free, that's just unreasonable. If he stays relatively injury-free, stays in the Premier League, and City stay at a pretty good level, I think he'll beat Alan Shearer's record. And I think if you beat Shearer's record, you have to say he's the best striker the Premier League has ever seen. If he beats Shearer's record and smashes it, is he the best footballer the Premier League has ever seen? Pure footballer, probably not. You'd say Henry's better than him. You'd say Ronaldo, obviously not at his pomp, but when he was at United the first time, he's probably better in terms of pure footballer than Haaland is right now. But the aim of the game is to score goals. And when you're scoring goals right now, when we're seeing football change in a way where strikers are becoming pretty much non-existent, like we saw City and Liverpool last year play without a striker. We saw Chelsea play better last year without a striker. And the way strikers are changing. You very rarely see 2 up front these days. You very rarely see like a 1-2 punch of a strike partnership. And you very rarely see an actual pure number 9 up front. Haaland is one of the very few players that plays up front and plays up front. You look at Salah for Liverpool, you look at even Mbappe, right, who's probably the next best striker. He plays on the left at times. And he's probably a little bit better playing off the left. He's probably the last of the pure striker that we're going to see, at least in this era of football. So it's going to be interesting. It's going to be interesting to see whether he can break the record. If he does, he is the best striker in Premier League history. I think this season could be the best season we've seen from a striker in Premier League history. Better than that Suarez season, better than that Henry season where he got 20 goals and 20 assists or something. I think it's a different time. I think it's harder to do it now because of the way football's changed. I know he's a little bit more protected, and Henry got kicked the shit out of, especially when he was at his pomp at Arsenal. I just think it's a little bit harder to score as many goals as the likes of Cole and Shearer and Henry did back in the day. Because of the way football changed, like I said, tactics are different, defences are different. Teams play with 5 at the back. Like, it's not 4-4-2 versus 4-4-2. Teams do change systems, and teams do kind of defend a little bit differently. So it's going to be interesting. It's going to be very interesting to see. I think he will. I think by the time I'm going to make this prediction right now. By the time Erling Haaland's career is done, he will be the best striker in Premier League history. He'll be better than Alan Shearer, and he'll be better than Thierry Henry. I'm not saying that he's going to be the best footballer, because as a pure footballer, I think he's not as good. But if talking purely as a striker, Erling Haaland will be the best striker in Premier League history by the time his career's done. Subjected to him staying at City for a prolonged period of time. This goal scoring record is something we haven't seen. It's ridiculous. And we obviously all remember that Suarez season, where he missed the first 5 or 6 games because he was suspended, and then still scored some. I think he scored around about 30 goals. He'll be better than that season. He'll be better than that season. It'll be better. Haaland will have the best individual season this year from any player we've seen in the Premier League. That's what I think. That's what my opinion. And I know it's a drastic change to what my opinion was this time 8 weeks ago when I said Núñez will score more than him. But I'm happy to hear my words, especially considering what he's doing. I feel like it's hard to not give credit to him. And now let's move on, because I feel like I don't want to speak about him. He's gonna piss me off. Let's speak about both derbies, and I don't want to do a whole tactical analysis on both of those, on both derbies. But I feel like it was an interesting, almost not changing of the guard, but it's interesting to see where both teams sit against each other, considering where they were last year, where they've been in years prior. So obviously, the North London derby as the first one. So I think we'll touch on that. It was a comfortable 3-1 win for Arsenal. Very comfortable. Arsenal were a cut above Spurs in that game, and I feel like it showed in that first half in a sense, because maybe I shouldn't have said that, but I feel like it's almost as if this game was a microcosm of both their seasons. Spurs just didn't look connected in a sense. I made this observation, which I tweeted about on the podcast Twitter, TFTPod. Spurs, sorry, I lost my train of thought. Spurs looked very disconnected. Their depth wasn't correct in a sense. Their depth wasn't right, and what I mean by that is Arsenal were doing so well in possession and doing so well in terms of tempo that they kept pushing Spurs back, and they kept pushing Spurs back pretty much within the first 15 minutes to on the edge of their 18-yard box. And what that means is, firstly, that means Arsenal get into advanced positions a lot quicker because they get one-on-ones out wide and they get one-on-ones in between the lines closer to goal. And also it means that they get shots from better distances and better angles, hence the Thomas Partey goal. If that Partey shot happens 5 yards further out, that goal doesn't go in. And the reason why it happened where it happened was because of Arsenal's relentless tempo in possession, especially in the final third. Now, not only did that work for Arsenal, it also hindered Spurs a lot, because Spurs kept getting pushed back and kept getting restricted in what they were able to do defensively, that they had to get as many numbers behind the ball as possible. So when they got that turnover, when they got that stop, or when a 50-50 challenge went their way, they had nothing on the counter-attack, because they'd lumped the ball up to Kane, who was the furthest forward, and he had no support because Richarlison and Son were so far deep and were so far back that he had nothing to use. Obviously, the fullback stayed heavily defensively minded as well during that game to counteract the overlapping fullbacks of Arsenal, especially on the left-hand side. However, Spurs' first goal came from a penalty, but that penalty came from Son, Kane, and Richarlison all in advanced positions at the same time. That was probably one of the first, if not the second time, Spurs were able to get all three of them in advanced positions and in positions where they could really hurt Arsenal. The way Spurs like to play is obviously very direct and it's very quick, but what that relies on, it relies on a solid midfield double pivot to ensure they don't get pressed back. It's almost as if they play like a counter press. They play like a defensive press. It's really weird the way Spurs defend. They defend compact and they defend tight, but they defend in a very eccentric way. They like to press really quickly to the ball carrier, especially in the midfield third, because as soon as they get that interception, or as soon as they dispossess that player, they pick up the ball, go. Kane, Richarlison, Kulusevski, Son, Lucas Moura, whoever, They're off. They're off and running. They're going. And it's a 3-on-3, 3-on-2, 4-on-3. So they weren't able to do that, which meant Arsenal were able to just control the game, control the tempo, and really create a comfortable game. It was 1-1 at half time, but really it was very, very calm. Very, very calm for Arsenal. Why I think Spurs weren't... I don't think Spurs did anything wrong. I just think Arsenal were too good. And now they're top of the league. They're sitting top of the league with 7 wins, 1 loss, I think. I don't think they'll win the league. I think that's pretty rash if I said that. But they'll give it a fair shake. They'll give it a fair shake, no doubt. And what that shows is massive improvement for Mikel Arteta. And I said this as soon as I watched that documentary, which is out, which I did a review on, back on the YouTube channel. You can go find it. I really like the way that he manages his team. I feel like as a man manager, he's improved drastically. We can see that. I feel like tactically, he's improved drastically. We can see that. And he's going to make me eat my words on Gabriel Jesus a little bit, because I thought Arsenal played a little bit better with a traditional number 9. I know Jesus isn't a false 9, he's a little bit of a pressing forward, but I wouldn't really say that he is a out and out pressing forward. I would say that he's more of a poacher in a sense, a poacher with pace, a poacher with skill. Put it that way. I thought they would play a little bit better with him on the right. I don't know what that would mean for Saka, but him on the right, and then an actual number 9 up front. But Arteta's making me eat my words. Fair play to him, fair credit to him, and I don't think Spurs did anything wrong. I don't think they should be too worried by any means. But it was just interesting to see how that game developed. I thought I predicted 2-2, but I thought if any team were going to win, it'd be Arsenal. I just really like how they're playing, which is annoying for me to say. And maybe they could win the league. Who says they can't? Leicester have won the league before, so West Brom can win it this year. Even though they're not in the Prem, they'll get promoted halfway through the year and still win it, because anything's possible in football. So, Arsenal. Well, I don't think they'll win the league. I think it'd be a good story if they did, wouldn't it? It'd be quite funny if they did, considering what they've gone through. But let's go to the other derby, which I've just spoken about a little bit when I was speaking about Haaland. It was, of course, the Manchester derby. Now, I predicted 2-1 United on Twitter. Beforehand, I saw the lineups. No Casemiro, no Ruben Diaz, no Laporte, no Ronaldo. So I thought, okay, this is a little bit of an interesting derby, because both teams aren't at full strength. Both teams aren't playing with their preferred 11. So it could almost come down to a game of who wants it more. And I thought if any team would want it more, it'd be Manchester United, because of, obviously, they beat Liverpool, and they always seem to get up for these games, especially considering where City have been in the last couple of years and where United have been in the last couple of years. It's almost their due diligence to get up for these games and to really give it a crack. Obviously, last year that didn't work out for them. I think they won 6-1 on aggregate over the last season. City, I think. Don't quote me on that. But in the league, that is. But what this game showed to me was City's quality is so good compared to United's right now. It's beyond a joke. Now, it was 4-0 at half time. The second half actually ended 3-2 to United. So I guess they won a half. I just think City are just too good for United at the moment, but United showed, especially in that second half, just how good they can be, and just how, maybe not just how good they can be, but just what Ten Hag is working with. I think it's a different game if Casemiro starts. I think it's a different game if, I say it was a different game if Casemiro starts. It's also a different game if Rodri starts or if Ruben Diaz starts. But I thought they'd be able to hit City on the counter-attack a little bit better. They weren't able to. City were just dominant in a sense, in terms of, like similarly with Arsenal, they just penned United back so deep that they had no counter-attack threat. and City and United's midfield isn't mobile enough to press really intensely. You had Bruno, Eriksson, and McTominay. Eriksson isn't very mobile these days. Bruno doesn't really do a whole lot of defensive work unless it's moaning at the referee. And McTominay, granted, he's pretty good defensively, but he just doesn't have the IQ of someone like a Casemiro to snuff out these chains in midfield and these pass patterns in midfield. I just think City were too good, far too good. So, 6-3, pretty interesting derby score. Can't remember the last time a game of this magnitude ended 6-3, but really it was really a 6-0, a 4-0. I think City would have taken 4-0 at halftime in terms of the full time result. Never want to concede 3. Some of the goals they conceded were pretty piss poor as well. Anthony's goal was great, I should say. Anthony's goal was great, and Foden and Haaland with hat-tricks. I think Foden got a hat-trick and 2 assists. Well, no, Haaland got a hat-trick and 2 assists. Kid is a joke. Kid is an absolute joke. 9.8 on FOTMob. Couldn't even give him a 9.9. How many times did he get dispossessed? He made 2 recoveries. Dispossessed twice. That's probably why he got knocked down to 9.9. But just two dominant derbies, two dominant derbies, and 2 derbies that you will look back on at maybe the next time both of these teams play, and you wouldn't expect it to be similar just because of how good both teams were in a sense. Yeah, but just about how good in terms of City were so good and Arsenal was so good. I feel like United and Spurs won't let that happen next time. But yeah, it'll be interesting to see, no doubt. I think that's a thing we'll have to wait and see, and maybe we'll bring it up next time these 2 teams or these 2 games are played. But let's move on to the second last talking point. Tick over 30 minutes, so I might hurry this bit up. But Wolves, Bruno Large sacked. Now, let's just get into this. Now, should I give my overall thoughts? I'll give my brief thoughts now, do my analysis, and then give my thoughts a little bit later on. But I don't get it. I don't get it. I know they haven't had the best starts of the season. I know they didn't have the best back end of the season, but I feel like you have to give him the benefit of the doubt based on what he was able to do for big parts of last season. While you guys weren't the best team to watch, while you guys weren't exciting to watch, you were pretty boring. In fact, I feel like the foundations that he set were pretty good and were good to build on. I think it was very deliberate the way that he managed Wolves last season in terms of setting a good defensive foundation early, making sure that they're hard to verse, hard to score against, and then solidifying that over the next season and then slowly integrating these more attacking assets to the game. Granted, it hasn't really panned out for him in a sense because, I mean, when you look at last season, they finished 10th, which is pretty good despite having a pretty poor back end of the season. They only scored 38 goals, which was the 4th worst in the league. However, they only conceded 43. So they scored 38 goals, which was the 4th worst last season, but they only conceded 43. So that was the 4th best. So I think it's almost you have to take the good with the bad in a sense. And that has translated to this year. They've only scored 3 goals, but they've only conceded 9. So it's almost as if you have to take what this system is giving you. Granted, they lost 2-0 to West Ham, which isn't a good result considering where West Ham have been. But the back ends of the season where they didn't win a game in 7, they only got 2 points from the 7 games, or from the last 7 games of last season. That hasn't helped him. And when you look at this season, what's like struck out to me was they have created the 7th most shot creating actions per 90 with 19.5, which is pretty good. It's the 7th most in the league. However, they've had the least amount of goal creating actions per 90 with 0.75. That drastic difference, coupled with the fact that they've created 10 big chances this year and missed 9 of them, that just goes to show that I don't think it's the creativity that's the issue. I think it's the scoring that's the issue. They've obviously brought in Diego Costa. They've brought in Gonzalo Guedes. I think that's how you pronounce his name. So they have brought in these strikers and these attacking players to try and help that system. Obviously, you have Pedro Neto, who unfortunately got substitute injured against West Ham. You have Podence. You have these other really interesting attacking players that I feel like should be given more time. Obviously, I have Traore and obviously Diego Costa, which I mentioned. It's going to be very interesting to see where they go from here. Because like I said, I don't think it's creativity that's the issue. I think it's finishing that's the issue. And I think it's that last pass in a sense. Obviously, they brought in Matthias Nunes, who's a fantastic signing. I really like what he's about. I really like how he can develop, and he's someone that in a couple of years' time will be in hide the man, no doubt, because of just how good he is, right? Playing a double pivot like he did on the weekends. And when we look at that, let's look at that game against West Ham in a minute. But they have all the pieces there, I think. They have the pieces there. Obviously, they had a big reign under Nuno, which ended pretty poorly. They brought in Bruno Large, who started the season very well, dropped off a little bit towards the end, and hasn't really been able to find his form back. But I feel like you have to give him the benefit of the doubt. In all honesty, I think it's a pretty harsh decision to get rid of him at this stage. And if we bring up the average positions here, which is probably a good segue, this is the average positions against the game against West Ham, for the game against West Ham. Now, I know this is the first game of the season where they've lined up in a 3 at the back system, I'm pretty sure. But I should caveat that by saying when Ryan Aitken plays on the left-hand side, it's pretty much playing as a 3 at the back formation all the time because of just how offensive he is and how attacking he is. They play with an elbow formation with that right back cutting inside. However, what you have here is you have a pretty clear back five. You have a pretty clear way of playing. Obviously, you have Kilman on the left. They put Ruben Neves as the central centre-back, which I actually don't mind. I actually think that's pretty good because of his distribution's great. Leadership is very good. Can speak Portuguese, which helps with a couple of other players, especially further ahead, which is something that I like, especially with the central centre-back. I like them to be able to communicate a lot with everyone because I can see everything. So for him being able to communicate really easily with the players ahead of him is just something that I like as a little bit of a side note. And I feel like defensively he's fine as well. I feel like defensively he's capable. He isn't the tallest, but we've seen like Thiago Silva plays as a central centre back for Chelsea when he under Thomas Tuchel, and he did perfectly fine. So yeah, that then you had Johnny on the right hand side, who I don't mind. You can see why he's a little bit further up, which I'll touch on. And then you had Aitken, Semedo, Nunes, and Moutinho. Nunes and Moutinho, you can see a double pivot. Moutinho, slightly a little bit deeper, doesn't really have the legs to go up and down all day like he used to. Nunes, a little bit more eccentric, a little bit more flair, likes to get up and down, likes to create likes to get into dangerous areas in the final third, so I like that. Then you have Aitken and Neto, who were very instrumental in terms of the way that they like to set up, in a sense. If you understand what I'm saying for that. I know Neto got subbed off pretty early, but when Cornet came on, when Adama came on, it was pretty similar in terms of the formation that was played. You had those two players out wide, as you can see, with Neto and Aitken, and then you had Semedo bombing on, which forced Johnny to kind of play a little bit more advanced in a sense. That's why you can see that little bit of an asymmetrical formation. And then you had Guedes and Podence kind of linking up, playing as like a two-man strike partnership, which is what we saw with Graham Potter's Chelsea as well, a little bit with Havertz and Aubameyang, which we talked about last episode, no, the episode before last. I just think I just think the way that they're playing is clear. It's a clear way of playing. It's a clear way of breaking down teams in a sense. It's maybe not breaking down teams, but it's a clear way of showing what they need to do and showing what they're trying to do, which is something that is big in my opinion. And if we that's not it. If we bring up this average positions one more time, we can see what they're trying to do. You have the back three, which pretty much a back four that plays with a little bit of an elbow formation with a right centre back pushing a little bit higher. Also like playing a little bit more of a defensive centre back if it's a 4, but really it's a 3 in a sense, because you have that right side of centre back pushing on a little bit to compensate for that right wing back bombing on and being really offensive, which is what Nelson Semedo is great at.
And then you have Aiton Nowry not being as offensive, but using the link-up player with that left forward to create a link-up play there. You have the solid foundation of a double pivot. You have the solid foundation up front with those two like offensive anchors in a sense, where they can peel off each other and work off each other. I just think the way that they played, while it wasn't exactly the same as what they've played for the most part of this season, I just feel like it's pretty good. Like, I just feel like they're pretty good, and I feel like it's extremely harsh to sack him at this time. I feel like it's extremely harsh to just get rid of him without a replacement already sorted. By the time this comes out, they might have already sorted a replacement for him. But yeah, it's pretty stiff on my end to get rid of him. Pretty stiff on my end to get rid of him. I didn't think you guys would have a great season, but I think he deserved the full backing of the board. He deserved the full backing of this season to really build off the foundations that he made last year. Maybe just offensively isn't strong enough. Maybe he isn't the man to take you guys forward. But to give him only not even 18 months, to give him 14 months, it's pretty harsh in my books. But I guess we'll just have to wait and see where that develops, because it is what it is, I guess. Yeah, I think that's enough for that, in all honesty. Pretty weird situation. I guess we'll just have to see where that develops. But let's move on. And should I touch on the A-League? We're tick over 40 minutes. I'll tell you what I'll do. Seek out my video on the Inner Sanctum YouTube channel. If you want my thought, if you want me to give a full A-League preview. That video is going to come out very soon. It's going to come out sometime this week, where I go through every team and just give a little bit of a preview for all of them, as well as a video with 3 talking points heading into the A-League season, which will come out over the next coming days as well. So seek out both of those if you want my thoughts on the A-League. I feel like we probably don't have time. I don't want to rush over, because I want to speak about who went into footed a little bit more in depth. So I don't want this to tick over 50 minutes and head into an hour. But yeah, seek out those 2 videos. And if I had to, I'll give a quick prediction now. I think top 6. I won't give top 6. I'll just give premiers will be Melbourne City. Champions will be Melbourne Victory. I'll back my boys in. I feel like what the signings we've made have been pretty good, so I'll back my boys in. First, what else should I do? Signing of the season. I think signing of the season will be Lewis Nani. That's just not me being biased. That's just me thinking factually. First manager sacked. Pretty tricky. First manager sacked. I'll go Warren Moon, I think, from Brisbane. Oh, but Charlie Austin might carry them. No, I'll go Warren Moon from Brisbane. Just not overly convinced by them. Although, that is harsh. That is very harsh. Maybe the Perth manager. Ruben Zakovic, is it? Is he still in a job? Is he still the coach? I actually don't know. Probably should get that fact checked. But either one of those 2 will be the first manager sacked, I think. It's very harsh. Although it will probably be Corica or someone. It just probably will, just for the bants, just because the A-League's great. But yeah, they're my predictions. Anything else? Not really. I'll give my preview of the weekend's games when the time comes. But let's move on to who went into footed. And for those who don't know what this segment is, basically where we go through some players, staff, organisations, teams, fans, anyone who just did something a little bit daft, did something a little bit dumb, and just spotlight them. And this week, slightly more serious topic, for those who know Australian football well, know exactly what I'm going to speak about. It is the Syndey United fiasco over the weekend. Now, I really don't want to speak about this. I really tried to ignore it last pod, but I feel like it's too big of a story not to ignore. Basically, Syndey United are an NPL side based in, obviously, Sydney. Formerly Sydney, Croatia, back in the old NSL days, I do believe. And they made a pretty good run to the Australia Cup final, where they versed MacArthur over the weekend, where they lost 2-0. But that's not really the story of what has come out of that game. It is the I don't want to mash up my words. I want to ensure that I say the correct thing. What has come about from that game isn't what happened on the pitch. It was what happened in the stands, and that was made public and made pretty well known to a lot of people after their semi-final victory, and it kind of got swept under the rug in the build up of the game. However, they booed the welcome to country. They boo the welcome to country, which happens at the start of every significant Australian sporting event, which is something fantastic, and something that should have been done a lot sooner. They booed that. I think they were chanting through the Australian national anthem. They were, and that, to be honest, is probably the light stuff, which is pretty shit to say because that's still pretty bad and still pretty poor form. What has taken up the headlines is, of course, the Nazi paraphernalia and hand gestures. We all know what hand gestures I'm alluding to. And obviously it's not a very good situation at all. And it's another situation where Australian football has taken one step forward and 450 steps backwards. Very disappointing. It's such a shame. It's such a shame because we all want to celebrate the story of this group of players who have nothing to do with what these fucking idiots are doing in the stands. What these players are doing on the pitch is next to phenomenal. They're part-time players taking it to some of the best players in the country, and the team itself needs to be applauded to the nth degree because what they have been able to achieve is outstanding. It's just a massive shame and a massive disappointment that they're associated with a bunch of people who don't deserve a place in Australian society. To put it bluntly, it's a massive shame. Massive shame, massive disappointment. And it's Australian football continuously kicks itself in the dick time and time again because on the eve of the A-League, on the eve of a season which is bound to be one of the best yet, where the headlines are being clogged not by the likes of Nani and Marco Tilio and these exciting storylines and these narratives. Can Western United go back to back? It's filled up with this absolute rubbish and this absolute dribble, which in 2022 should not be happening. It needs to be out. Obviously, the FFA released a statement, which was very good. Syndey United released a statement, which was pretty good, I thought. I think the main people in football media need to speak out publicly about it, and and condemn it to the nth degree because it needs to be condemned and it needs to be really publicized and denounced on a public scale and of course, I'm lost for words. Those people who are not caught on camera, because I'm not sure they give a shit. I'm not sure they're trying to hide it, which makes it worse. Those people who we know the faces of doing these things need to be reprimanded heavily. Should not be allowed in Australia stadia for a long time, if not for the rest of their lives. And it's something that if we want to speak about a national second division, we have to acknowledge that these things will happen. And I feel sorry for the normal supporters of Syndey United, people who just like the club, Croatians or maybe second, third generation Croatians who have found a belonging with Syndey United, or Syndey Croatia, then now Syndey United. Obviously, this issue that isn't just a Syndey United issue. It is an issue with a lot of these clubs that have stemmed from the NSL. Not every club was like this by any means. Not every club was like this. I would hazard a guess to say 95% of clubs who were around in the NSL and still around to these days aren't like this. They're just passionate sporting fans who have found a belonging with a football club that represents their culture. Whether that be if you're Greek, South Melbourne, whether that be if you're Croatian with Syndey United or Melbourne Knights or whoever, right? It's like these football fans who are being tarnished with the same brush as these idiots don't deserve to be. And that's probably the worst thing. Well, maybe not the worst thing, but one of the worst things that has come out of this, because we want a national second division. We want some promotion relegation. We want to acknowledge these. We want to acknowledge what this game in this country was really built off and publicised with, and that is with the European migrants in a sense. That's what the NSL was built on in a sense, and we want to celebrate that, and we want to celebrate the good parts of it, and the passionate parts of it, and the partisan parts of it, but not this utter rubbish and this utter dribble and this blatant illegal behaviour. It's such a shame. It's such a shame because, like I said, there's Syndey United fans out there who just want to support a football club that represents their Croatian roots, their Croatian ancestors, and their culture. I feel like a lot of people my age, a little bit older, maybe the generation older than me, speaking from a personal experience, I know a lot of people who have found belonging with South Melbourne or with Heidelberg or with these other Greek clubs. I know a lot of people who have found connections and found belonging with Melbourne Knights, with their Croatian roots. And I know, and I'm certain that a lot of people have found connection with Syndey United based off their Croatian roots as well. It's just a shame that they're now tarnished with the same brush, which they shouldn't be, because of these criminals. Maybe not, but maybe that was a little bit harsh, but you know what I mean. Yeah, it's kind of why I didn't want to go in depth on the A-League preview, because I knew I'd rant about this quite a bit, and I knew I'd speak about this. It's just so disappointing. It's just so disappointing. So disappointing. And such a shame. Such a shame. It's one of those things which, once again, one step forward, 6 million steps backwards, back to square one. And this whole thing is one of the reasons why football continuously gets denounced and gets punched in the face by mainstream media, because of these hooligans. Football fans aren't like that. They're not like that. We've seen incidents, yes, there's been isolated incidents in the A-League last season, which I've spoken about on this podcast. There's been incidents, yes, but there's been incidents in the AFL, NRL, every single sporting code. So don't just identify this to football. This is obviously a societal issue in this country. However, isolated incidents are so much, I don't want to use the word better, but are far less worse than organised. I was going to say terrorism, but I don't think that's the right word. I don't want to use that word. Then this organised hate. Yeah. Maybe I should cut that out. I don't know. If this makes the final bit, then I guess it does. I don't know. I might bleep some of that out. Might cut some of that out. But I think it's good that it's raw. I think it's good that it's honest. I think it's good that it's my thoughts. But yeah, one step forward, 3,000 steps backwards, back to square one. Back to all the mainstream media pot-shotting the football in this country because of what they think it is. But when you do some research, when you delve into it, when you get invested in it, it's just a bunch of people so passionate about this game. And then when you look at it, passionate about their clubs who bring them a sense of belonging. Whether or not you are a Melbourne Victory supporter because you didn't have a connection to any of the old NSL clubs, or whether or not you supported South Melbourne or Heidelberg when they were in the NSL and you stuck by them because you have that connection with them. I applaud you for that, and you are not. And I'm sorry, and it's a shame that everyone has been tarnished with the same brush as these people who are doing this on such a public scale. Who gives a shit if they bought 10,000 fans? Who cares? I would rather have them bought 1,000 and got rid of every single person that was a part of that, because I know this for a fact. there were people within that group who are so against what those fans were doing that I feel for them so much, because I can't imagine what they're feeling at the moment. But I would happily get rid of all those fans that were doing that rubbish. Keep the ones that are just partisan about their club and partisan about the game and love the game and aren't involved in any of that shit. I would take that tenfold. Whether that means cutting their attendance figures in half, I'd rather that. I just don't. That has no place, not only in the game, that has no place in society. And the fact that it's seeping into the sport, considering the backlash it's faced because of shit like that used to happen back in the 80s, the fact that it's happening again now, where it is known how unacceptable that is such a shame. So frustrating. So annoying. It's a disgrace. It's an absolute disgrace. But I guess it is what it is. I mean, it's not. It is what it is. But yeah. Fuck. Let's just move on before I get really angry. Let's move on. Preview of the week. Now, if you're not Australian and you listen to that bit, I don't understand why you would. You probably didn't understand the context. But yeah, Anyway, let's move on. Fuck me. Champions League is back this week. Inter vs Barca, one of the marquee games. Napoli Ajax, Liverpool Rangers. That group continues to deliver. Liverpool Rangers is the game this week. Chelsea vs Milan is also pretty good. And then obviously the A-League kicks off. This weekend with the grand final rematch. Melbourne City vs Western United. If I have to give a prediction, I'd say Melbourne City 2-all. Let's go 2-all. Obviously the Central Coast Mariners versus Newcastle Jets. What derby is that called? The M3 derby? Is that what it's called? I don't know. It's not the distance derby, so who really cares? Central Coast Newcastle, that's a derby. Hopefully Grant Qual can do something. He's still there, isn't he? I think that activates in January, hopefully. Obviously the Big Blue, hopefully my Victory Boys get up. And then no other big games if we're talking Premier League. Arsenal-Liverpool is going to be interesting to see whether or not Arsenal can maintain their standing, in a sense, and maintain their superiority over the league. I guess we'll just have to wait and see. But yes, that is all. Thank you all very much for watching. Thank you all very much for sticking around. Slightly longer episode, but I hope you can understand why, because of what I spoke about. But yes, make sure you subscribe to 2 Foot Attacker Podcast on YouTube. Like the video, notification bell. What else was it? Socials, 2 Foot Attacker Podcast, Instagram and TikTok. 2FTPod on Twitter. Anchor, Spotify, Google Podcast, Apple Podcast. 5-star rating. Like it, subscribe to it, follow it, notifications, all that good stuff. Share it around, means the world to me. Thank you all very much for watching. See you guys next week. Here we go. See you guys next week. Thank you all very much for sticking around. Speak to you guys soon. Goodbye.